I work front desk at a boutique hotel in Amsterdam. An American guest demanded we remove the bikes blocking his parking spot. I explained those were guest bicycles, free to use. He said, I paid for a room, so I own that space. I told him parking was separate, €50 daily. He went silent, then said, in America, parking is a constitutional right. I asked which amendment. He said, the pursuit of happiness one. I can't be happy without my truck, I explained. We're in the Netherlands, not under American constitutional jurisdiction. He asked if we were a communist hotel. I said no, just Dutch. He wanted to speak with the owner about freedom violations. Our owner was cycling past at that moment. The guest asked why everyone here rides bikes instead of real vehicles. The owner said bikes were real vehicles. The guest said, not in my America. The owner replied, good thing we're in my Amsterdam. The guest checked out early. Left a review saying, we banned cars. Last summer, a woman asked our Paris cafe for normal coffee. I offered espresso, cappuccino, Americano. She said, no, normal coffee. You know, coffee? I explained these were all coffee. She said, I mean like from Starbucks, regular, in a real cup. I showed her our ceramic cups. She meant paper cups. She said ceramic wasn't sanitary because everyone touches it. I explained we wash dishes. She asked if we had American health standards. I said we had European ones, generally stricter. She said that was propaganda. She ordered tea instead, asked for iced tea. We don't serve iced tea. She said, how do you not have iced tea? It's tea, but cold. I offered to put ice in hot tea. She said that would ruin the chemicals. She left. A tourist asked our Stockholm pharmacy for Tylenol that actually works. I offered paracetamol, same ingredient. He said no, I need real Tylenol. American medicine. I explained identical active ingredient, just Swedish packaging. He said American Tylenol was FDA approved, so stronger. I mentioned our European Medicines Agency approval. He said, never heard of it, so it doesn't count. He bought nothing. Said he'd wait until real pharmacy. But nothing prepared me for the confident chaos of Americans explaining freedom to the very Europeans who invented half their systems. I manage a train station in Munich. An American demanded a refund because the train system is broken. I asked what happened. He said, I had a ticket for the 2 o'clock train. I showed up at 2:15. The train was gone. I explained trains depart on schedule. He said, exactly. So where's my train? I said it left at 2 o'clock. He said, but I had a ticket. I explained tickets don't hold trains. He said in America, if you buy something, you own it. I owned that seat. I said the ticket was for 2 o'clock, specifically. He said, that's a suggestion, not a law. I showed him the departure time printed clearly on his ticket. He said, I'm a paying customer. The train should wait, I explained. 400 other passengers would be delayed. He said, that's their problem. I have freedom to travel. I offered him the next train 40 minutes later. He demanded compensation for restricting his movement. I said no compensation for missed departures. He said, this is why Europe lost the Revolutionary War. I'm German. We weren't involved in that war. He said, exactly. You wouldn't understand freedom. He filed a complaint with our headquarters. They sent a standard response about punctuality. He posted on social media that German trains violate human rights. Someone replied that German trains are famous for punctuality. He said, that's the problem. No flexibility. No freedom. I drive a taxi in Prague. An American couple got in, said, take us to the Eiffel Tower. I said, that's in Paris. This is Prague, the man said. We're in Europe. It's all connected. I explained Paris was over 10 hours away. He said, Europe is small. I saw it on a map. I showed him on my phone the actual distance. He said, your phone must be wrong. His wife said, we paid for a Europe trip. All the monuments should be accessible, I explained. Prague had beautiful monuments of its own. He said, we didn't come to Europe to see Czech stuff. We came for the famous things. I asked what they wanted to see. He listed Eiffel Tower, Big Ben, Colosseum. I explained those were in 3 different countries, thousands of kilometers apart. He said that's false advertising. The brochure said Europe. I said Europe was a continent. He said, so drive to the continent. Explained we were already on the continent. He got frustrated, said in America everything is bigger but easier to reach. This makes no sense. I suggested they visit Prague Castle instead. He said, is it as good as the real castles? I said it was a real castle. He said, I mean like Disney. I gave up. They took a selfie in the taxi and left, telling other tourists that European taxis refuse to drive to attractions. I work customs at Brussels Airport. An American man argued about passport control. He said, I already showed this in London. Why do I show it again? I explained he was entering a different country. He said, you're all in Europe. That's one place. Blamed the European Union has member states. He said, states are American. You have countries. I said, yes. Different countries require border checks. He said, this is bureaucracy limiting freedom of movement. Explained freedom of movement applied to EU citizens. He said, I'm American. We invented freedom. It applies to me more. I asked him to step forward for processing. He said, I already went through freedom inspection in London. Explained that was UK border control. He said, what's the difference? I said, different nations, different borders. He said, this is why America is better. We have 50 states, 1 passport check. I processed his passport. He asked why it took so long. It took 40 seconds. He said, in America, they trust you. Here you assume everyone's guilty. Stamped his passport. He asked what the stamp meant. I said entry permission. He said, I don't need permission. I have rights. I waved him through. He told the next person in line. They're very controlling here. I manage a restaurant. In Rome, an American stood up during dinner and gave a speech about our menu being anti-freedom. He announced to all diners that charging for water was taxation without representation. I approached quietly, asked him to sit. He said, I'm exercising free speech. Explained this was a private establishment. He said, public place, public speech. I explained, restaurant rules differ from public squares. He said, I'm a paying customer. I bought the right to speak. Said he bought dinner. He said, in America, business can't silence customers. I explained Italian restaurants maintain atmosphere. He said, atmosphere is censorship. Other diners were staring. He noticed, said, see? I'm starting a conversation. I offered to discuss his concerns privately. He said, no backroom deals. Transparency. Explained his complaints weren't about transparency. He accused me of European suppression tactics. I gave him 2 choices, sit quietly or leave. He said, you're proving my point about freedom. Called the owner. The owner is my uncle, speaks minimal English. The American tried explaining freedom of speech. My uncle nodded, understanding nothing, then pointed at the door. The American said, he agrees with me. My uncle repeated, out. The American left, shouting, you'll hear from my embassy. We never did. His review said, we criminalized opinions. I work at a bookstore in Copenhagen. An American asked why we had a section for American politics but not alternative views. Said we carried various perspectives. He pointed at books critical of American policies. He said, where are the pro-America books? I showed him several. He said, these are by Europeans. I mean real American authors. Showed him American authors in our collection. He said, these are liberal Americans. Where's the balance? I explained we stocked books that sold. He said, so you're admitting commercial censorship? I said we were a bookstore, not a library. He said, in America, bookstores have free speech sections. I'd never heard of this. He said, you wouldn't know. You're not free. I asked what he meant. He said, your government probably controls what you stock. I explained Denmark has no such controls. He said, that's what they tell you. I asked who they were. He said, the system. I asked which system. He said, exactly. You don't even see it. You bought nothing. Later, he posted that Danish bookstores hide American truth. Someone replied that Denmark ranks highest in press freedom indexes. He said, "Thousandixes are European propaganda." I work at a university in Barcelona. An American exchange student interrupted our political science lecture. He said, "You're only presenting one side." The professor asked what he meant. He said, "You're teaching socialism without showing capitalism's benefits." The professor said, "We discussed capitalism extensively last week." He said, "You presented it negatively." Professor said, "We'd analyzed various perspectives." He said, "Analysis is bias." The professor asked him to elaborate. He said, "In America, professors give both sides equal time without judgment." The professor said scholarship required critical evaluation. He said, "Critical means negative. That's not neutral." The professor asked if he'd done the readings. He said, "I read summaries. The originals are too long." Professor said summaries weren't sufficient for university discussion. He said, "This is gatekeeping information." Professor asked what he meant. He said, "Requiring people to read whole books limits who can participate." The professor explained that's how academic discourse works. He said, "Maybe in Europe. In America, everyone's opinion counts equally." Professor said, "Informed opinions carry more weight." He said, "That's elitism." The professor continued the lecture. The student left, filed a complaint about ideological discrimination. The department reviewed it, found no merit. He told other exchange students that Spanish universities punish independent thinking. Most ignored him. One asked what independent thinking meant. He said, "Disagreeing with professors." She said, "We do that all the time." He said, "But do you win?" She looked confused. I work at a polling station in Oslo during local elections. An American tourist asked if he could vote. I said only Norwegian citizens could vote in national elections. He said, "I pay taxes when I buy things here. Taxation means representation." I explained sales tax wasn't income tax. He said, "Tax is tax." I said voting required citizenship. He said, "I'm visiting. That makes me a temporary citizen." I explained that wasn't how citizenship worked. He said, "In America, we fought a war about this." I said that war was about colonial representation. He said, "Same thing. I'm being colonized by your prices," I explained. He chose to visit Norway. He said, "So freedom only applies to people born here?" I said democratic participation required civic membership. He said, "Democracy means everyone votes." I said democracy means citizens vote. He said, "That's selective democracy." I explained all democracies have citizenship requirements. He said, "Not in America. We believe in universal freedom." I mentioned America also restricts voting to citizens. He paused and said, "But we earn that right by being American." I asked how one earns being American. He said, "By believing in freedom." I asked if belief granted citizenship. He said it should. I suggested he research naturalization processes. He said, "Naturalization is paperwork. Freedom is a feeling." I returned to processing actual voters. He watched for a while, then said to another tourist, "They take this very seriously here." The other tourist said, "It's an election," he said. "Still, you'd think they'd be more relaxed about it." He left. Posted that Norwegian democracy was technically legal, but spiritually restrictive. Someone replied asking what that meant. He never clarified. The thing about freedom is it actually means something specific in each place. It's not a magic word that rearranges reality to match your expectations. Europeans didn't misunderstand American freedom. Americans misunderstood that freedom has context, laws, and mutual respect built into it. Every country defines its social contract differently. That's not oppression. That's sovereignty. Next time, we'll explore Americans confidently correcting Europeans about European history. You haven't lived until you've heard someone explain World War II to a Polish grandmother. Subscribe so you don't miss it.